Welcome to YogiViews, where my guest is yoga itself, through interviewing those who practice it, teach it, sell it, or simply love it. I am Antonio Sausis. Yoga, from the Sanskrit root yuj, means union, integration. It is not surprising that as it grounds in the modern world, yoga is explored in conjunction with arts, science, sports, and even medicine. So, what happens when yoga, as considered from its vast and original context, including scripture, study, meditation, breath work, and physical postures, is integrated with Western psychological theory and clinical practice, including the breakthroughs in somatic psychology, trauma research, and neuroscience? To answer this question, the California Institute of Integral Studies presented a conference entitled Yoga and Psyche, the Future of Psychology in San Francisco. The conference was the idea of Mariana Caplan, a longtime teacher at the Institute. Yet the very history of CIIS is one of exploration of the integration of yoga. Back in 1950, Frederick Spiegelberg was searching for a scholar from India to join him, Alan Watts, and others to help form the faculty of a new and innovative graduate school in San Francisco. He contacted none other than Sri Aurobindo, who recommended Dr. Haridas Chowdhury, a person well-versed in Eastern and Western philosophies with a deep knowledge of integral yoga, who accepted the invitation and moved to North America. As the number of students who wanted to study with Dr. Chowdhury increased, he founded the Institute in 1968. Since then, and throughout its history, the Institute has fostered cutting-edge thought. Over the decades, CIIS's original emphasis on Asian religions and cultures has evolved to include comparative and cross-cultural studies in philosophy, religion, psychology, counseling, cultural anthropology, organizational studies, health studies, and the arts, as well as a bachelor's degree completion program. Here's how CIIS President Joseph Subiondo opened the conference.
Mariana has been associated with CIIS in a variety of different capacities, and most importantly as a faculty member, and as somebody who, both having a PhD and an MFD at the same time, has been engaging in bringing together yoga and psychology in a very special way. In fact, I would argue that she is the first to do this in the way that she has done it, and this conference is really the outgrowth of that personal commitment to bringing these two extraordinary areas together in such a meaningful way. And the fact that you're all here this evening, and the fact that we have these extraordinary people on the program, I think talk about how important this movement has become.
The conference was the inspiration of Mariana, who wanted to create a field, as she expressed it in her opening remarks.
But we, with everybody contributing their own uniqueness and gifts, had the possibility to create and forge a new field, the intersection of yoga and psychology. Really, what can happen when we take this 2,000 to 4,000 year old tradition of yoga, right? It's so effective that it translates into every country that it's placed. I taught my baby yoga at a certain point, right? Elderly, you can do yoga if you can't move. Right? Yoga translates everywhere to everyone. And psychology, which to me is like a little baby. Psychology, as we were talking, many were here today, people are so ready to dismiss psychology, saying, oh, it's just in your mind, it's just talk. I always think it's this baby, and it's 135 years old. And when I read the scholars that suggest that psychology might be the Western world's contribution to spirituality, I resonate with that. Western psychology, in my experience, and I'll share a little bit more how I got to this in a few minutes, has Western science particularly developments in somatic psychology as well as trauma research and neuroscience, has developed a set of tools and understanding that I found to be very accessible to the Western person, that take into account being raised into a climate where families are separated, where trauma and abuse and isolation and speed, right, is part of all of our lives. So I find that the psychology, not necessarily the psychology that most people imagine, but the psychology that we're birthing, has tools to penetrate the Western psyche that are as pristine as some of the great yogic practices. But we don't have to choose, because we're here to bring it all together, not as a mishmash, but to become really intelligent and to learn from each other and to listen and to contemplate and draw the deepest, right from the deepest wells of Western psychology and the whole scope of yoga.
The great Rama Yoti Vernon proceeded to bless the conference, invoking the lineage that CIIS was originally a part of.
Let's just invoke, in this moment, the spirit of Sri Aurobindo as it's manifesting through so many who have not had the direct contact, but who are feeling and at one with that lineage. And then let us just invoke the spirit of Dr. Haridas Chaudhuri, who gave so much of his life so that we could all be part of this wonder called CIIS. And I feel we invoke that energy of Sri Aurobindo, who said, all life is yoga. Let us carry it into our world as we ask for the illumination of our mind and our hearts, and to take what we learned this weekend, what we remember, back into any darkened corners of our world as a healing. And may our consciousness now, as we gather together, so that those on high, the invisible presences, can gather together. And may we just expand throughout each breath, beyond every border, every boundary that we have set for ourselves in the past, beyond the nation, states, and people, to observe, to embrace the oneness of all. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace in every phase of our being, with our physical, our subtle, our causal bodies. Peace in every area of our life, especially with those where there has been challenges. And may there be peace throughout our world, so we can realize the great evolutionary teachings of Sri Aurobindo through Dr. Chaudhuri, and create and be the beacon of light, and create that heaven on earth. May it be so.
The conference was held at the iconic Whitcomb Hotel in downtown San Francisco, a marvel of early 19th century and Edwardian architecture. Throughout the following days, teachers and scholars presented teachings, research, insights, and practices from these two vast and complementary traditions. Darcy Lyon was one of the teachers offering something crucial to yoga: practice.
Of tree pose, right foot's on the floor, you can take half lotus, you can put the right foot, the left foot on the ankle, you can put left foot on the left thigh, whatever.
Rod Stryker spoke about the way psychology and yoga see the mind and guided participants through an exercise to dig deep into the cause of personal suffering, emphasizing the value of understanding one's desires through self-inquiry.
I'd like you to now begin to use something in your life as a way to, let's say, drill down into this exercise. Something that right now is not completely resolved in your life. Some area of frustration, sadness, anger, disappointment. What's the desire that's not being fulfilled that's generating the disappointment, that's generating the anger, that's generating the frustration? I said 2 sentences for the story. The rest of the exploration is, what am I choosing? What are the choices I'm making that are generating this unhappiness? What am I identifying with that then is creating or spinning desires that then are unfulfilled or the source of my suffering? From the yogic point of view, it's not the story. It's the choice you're making to hold on to the desire in the way you're holding on to it. Now, most human experience is we go from the right to the left on the chart as you look at it, as on my right. It's your left to right. We have interface with the world, we run it through our memories and our sense of identity, and based on that we make decisions, good, bad, helpful or unhelpful. What does a yogi do? The yogi, this is reversed. The yogi rests in the light of luminosity, of self-knowingness. And from that, the very decision maker shares and is influenced by that light. And this is where the light of discernment, because the power of discernment is also your buddhi. This is both discerning, deciding, and then choosing to act. So the yogi rests in the soul and now views that and reaches that self-viewing, that self-knowing as one as a completely free being, totally fulfilled, innately fulfilled. And then based on that, the decisions become very different. You see that if we make decisions from a kind of deficit in our self-esteem, if we make decisions by conditions and past experiences that left imprinting, that was less than constructive, then we will then be kind of recreating the life that we've already experienced. On the other hand, the breakthrough of yoga is that when we still the mind and we rest in the soul, now our decision-making process is rooted in this fundamental sense that we are something other than our past. We are something other than our conditioning. And with that innate confidence, it's not even confidence as like most of us think of confidence, that's something that goes away. The soul has that self-confidence of self-knowing, that rises out of self-knowing. Then all of our decisions are different.
Gabriel Axel addressed the fusion of yogic and neurological science.
Yogis know that. And that's the great thing about yogic science and neuroscience coming together, is that a lot of things neuroscience doesn't know, but yogic science could really help inform neuroscience of. And the case for that is usually something that involves suspending disbelief. Right? Knowing that both sciences are forms of science, meaning you have a question, you go collect data, and you corroborate it. Whether you're meditating, let's all go inside together, let's focus on our heart chakras and see what we feel, and you discuss it. That you could say that's a form of science, of deep science.
Dr. Sanit Varma spoke about Indian psychology, its theory and practice.
Yesterday, we were blessed, and there was the line from Sri Aurobindo, all of life is yoga. But then Sri Aurobindo also said yoga is nothing but practical psychology. So I cannot uphold this distinction between yoga and psychology. Yoga includes all the issues that are included in psychology. And different systems of yoga address all kinds of issues in life. That has been my lived experience in India.
I have an opportunity now to sit here with Karim Baer, and he is the director of the public programs and performances here at CIIS. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure.
And of course, CIIS is hosting this conference. Why?
Well, you know, a variety of reasons. We've worked with Mariana for years, and she brought this idea to us, and we thought it was a really incredible idea and really compelling. But, you know, I think yoga has been an important part of CIIS from the beginning. When you know, we were founded by Haridas Chowdhury, the Indian philosopher who was a student of Sri Aurobindo. So it's in a certain way very much part of our roots. So then, you know, also every time I go to a yoga class in San Francisco, I'm kind of struck by how many of our students and our alums, and who are mostly in our counseling programs, are there. So it's obvious to me that so many of, you know, our students who are practicing psychology and practicing as psychotherapists are using yoga in their personal lives and most likely in their practices. And, you know, I think one of the great phenomenons of yoga, especially in the last, you know, 20 years, but 15, 10, and even more recently 5, like so many people in the States are using yoga kind of for their own healing. And I think, you know, probably there's more people who do yoga than go to psychotherapy in a certain way. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I think sometimes when they go to yoga, they're not necessarily dealing with some of the deeper personality issues or traumas from childhood. And so I think being able to kind of look at, but they're coming up. You know, I think those traumas, I think, come up in a practice. You know, anytime you're really doing a practice, it's going to bring you more into yourself. So I think training people that can use the system of yoga, but then also, you know, be able to identify some of the clinical needs a client might have is really, really important.
And you are a very important house of studies in the world. You know, you offer a lot of important academical courses, and people look at the institute as a regarded and serious place where to study. What do you think is the academical importance of mixing these two, yoga and psychology?
Well, you know, I think you know, I think one of the important things about any academic endeavor is, you know, really the ability to authentically reflect, you know, and question and use critical thinking to examine. And you know, I think something that can happen in yoga sometimes, especially maybe with people who, you know, there's so much out there of varying levels of, you know, so many teachers that have varying levels of skill and expertise, and, you know, sometimes you have teachers who, you know, maybe are very flexible and but don't necessarily have the deeper kind of understanding of yoga as a meditative practice, as a mystical tradition, as a psychological tool. But, you know, they're giving life advice. And so I think it's important to be able to look at both yoga and psychology and, you know, really reflect, you know, really examine the tradition, and, you know, so partly so that we have some quality control, you know, so that people who are out there giving life advice are doing some from a very informed place. And, you know, not, you know, informed both in, you know, an academic study, but also, you know, I think one of the beautiful things about CIIS and the study that happens at CIIS is it's not just academic as far as, you know, reading a book or doing research and scholarship. Like, you are the book. You know, you are, you know, you're the scholar of your own self in a certain way, but being able to merge those things, because you can go too far into that side and then you're just kind of dictating by your own experience that's not necessarily checked out by or validated by a lineage or so, you know, I think that's one aspect that's important to this conference is, again, you know, I mean, psychology is a very rich tradition, and I think in some ways it has been the Western yoga. So I think being able to understand the system of yoga and just how intricate it can be, as well as, you know, bringing, you know, academic research to what's happening in psychology is vital. Yeah,
it's very, especially for the acceptance of yoga as a valid tool.
Yeah, well, and also, you know, I think I'm always afraid people could get hurt. You know, not necessarily, I mean, there's my knee that gets hurt, but also, you know, psychologically, you know, I've seen great abuses of power, you know, over the years in different communities, and I think that's something important to be able to look at from a psychological perspective, kind of what happens, you know, with transference and counter-transference, because, you know, the transference that happens, you know, in the client-patient relationship or the client-therapist relationship, it's very similar to what happens in the teacher-student relationship. And I think when that has gone unexamined, it's led to sticky situations, and not just sticky, but situations where there's been some real trauma that's incurred. So
yeah. And so there's been a clear progression for CIIS and development, a clear forward going direction.
Yeah.
What's next
What's
in terms
next?
of the integration?
You know, I'm not quite sure. You know, I'm hoping that this becomes at least a semi-annual conference. You know, I think it's worth. I think you know, there's some incredible people that came together this weekend, but this is only some of the people who are doing interesting work in this way. So I'm hoping we find some other people that we know of, as well as some people we don't know of, who are integrating psychology and yoga, and can feature them. But I'm also hoping that we can offer some other kinds of programs. Actually, a very prominent yoga teacher in the area just approached me about doing something for men in yoga, because I think sometimes teachers don't always know how to teach to men. You know, like it may be 10% of the class sometimes, but you know, men have different needs, both physically and psychologically. And so that was very intriguing to me, and again, was just proposed very recently. So it's in the early stages of exploration. I think exploring more, you know, I really love the work of Angela Farmer, and something that we've been doing for years is hosting people like Anna Halpern, dancers like Zuleika, who do really interesting embodiment work, but it's not necessarily in the form of yoga. Mm-hmm. And you know, one of the things I've always found about yoga is sometimes it's made me very sad when I go to studios and I see people really trying to accomplish over their body, you know, trying to force their body into this, sometimes shapes that are not necessarily natural to their body, and it's not informed by their own somatic awareness or their own somatic sensing. You know, Bonnie Bainbridge-Cohen is someone else that we've hosted a lot. She's the originator of body-mind centering. And I think one of the things that's unique about Angela is how she's integrated this like very organic somatic sensing with yoga and the postures. And I would love to find some more people who are doing some work like that. So, you know, I think, you know, for us, it's really about depth. Finding people that, you know, our general, as an extension of university, as the, you know, public programs performances, you know, we're really committed to offering programming that is, you know, elevating the level of discourse in our society, but also inspiring personal social transformation. So I think for me, that's kind of always the baseline, you know, that's our mission. But, you know, as a university, I love it when people disagree, you know, so, you know, I think sometimes we get kind of tricked into thinking we're all supposed to come and believe the same thing, but I love it when you have people that can adamantly disagree and debate and offer some real kind of back and forth to, you know, to help us kind of unpeel the onion, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, I would think that you might agree with me that certainly this conference has helped CIIS deepen the exploration in this area. And so thank you very much for speaking with us, and certainly thank you for putting this conference together.
Thank you. It's been a real honor.
And then, of course, I spent some time chatting with Mariana Caplan, who founded the conference.
My loves, as I think yours are too, are the great ancient yoga, the 2,000 to 4,000 year old yoga, and the infant of psychology that I feel like we're just birthing. And I love one just as I love the other. And within me, there's no separation between the two.
You have a project that perhaps viewers recall that we interviewed you about at the studio some time ago, about your Yoga and Psyche project. How does your project and the conference relate?
The conference is just an extension of my vision. I began teaching yoga at CIIS in 2006. I've been teaching at CIIS since 2000 in various capacities. And I've taught for several years, and I'm refining and meeting people around the world. And I wanted to know who else in the world is interested in what I'm interested in. And for me, nobody owns yoga, nobody owns psychology. The two together are so much greater than either alone.
And psychology is very young, and the amazing popularity of yoga is young as well. So obviously both are somehow satisfying or addressing an important need. of the world, what is that need, in your opinion?
The need to heal, and the need to thrive, and the desire to be happy. Yoga has had I believe it's the longest living spiritual tradition in the world, because there's something so essential about it that you can bring it into any culture, any age group, any aspect of life, and it's effective. And at the same time, when these traditions are imported, they're certainly imported into a distinct cultural context and into a time period. And if we don't take that into account, there's usually a gap. In the case of yoga, this gap is seen in the vast amount of spiritual scandals, an extraordinary amount of spiritual scandals that continue to arise over and over again. So Western Buddhism, I think in the last 20 years, maybe before, but has really appreciated the value of Western psychology in addressing the contents of our consciousness, the specific details of intimacy and self-esteem and alienation, whereas these spiritual traditions are impeccable in their maps of consciousness. So much as Buddhism has, Western Buddhism has already begun to recognize and embrace the need for Western psychology, I think, I deeply believe that yoga is in this wave, as you're saying, of a recognition that Western psychology can deepen the roots as it transplants itself into the Western world, that we can make them stronger and more firm and more solid. And I've been most struck with in being here so far is the quality of the attendees. This morning, I met Eleanor Griswold, who was the wife of Thomas Hanna, who founded somatic psychology. You know, people like yourself, Georg Feuerstein's widow, Trish Feuerstein, these extraordinary visionaries are here in the audience. So whether in teaching capacity or participation, part of what's stirring in me is how could we harness all the knowledge that's in the space of the 150 of us.
The connection between yoga and psychology is undeniable. They share two core concepts. One is know thyself. The other is suffering can be reduced or diminished. For psychology, self-knowledge is what fuels psychic transformation, the light that dispels the darkness that dysfunction feeds off. For yoga, just as one drop of the ocean contains all the components of the ocean, each one of us contains the information of the entire universe. So if you know yourself, you know the whole. You know it all, including God. Both disciplines are dedicated to reducing the suffering, precisely by increasing self-knowledge and a sense of connection with everything else that exists. I thank Mariana Caplan and CIIS for this great idea and for bringing esteemed doctors, clinicians, professors, yoga therapists, and cutting-edge researchers from around the world together to demonstrate how yoga becomes more effective to the Western practitioner through the integration with psychology, and how psychological theory and methods are benefited by the knowledge and practice of the yoga tradition. I hope you liked our show today. And if you care to let me know, shoot me an email at antonio@yogiviews.com. I look forward to seeing you the next time